Did you know there's a prayer so powerful, so feared by the forces of darkness, that Padre Pio himself, the stigmatized saint who battled demons his entire life, recommended it to anyone facing impossible spiritual battles? A prayer that, when offered with true faith before April 5th, can completely change the course of your life, bring supernatural protection to your family, open doors that seemed eternally shut, and place you under the protective mantle of the man who fathered the Son of God himself? If you're going through moments of deep anguish, if you feel like you're fighting alone against unseen forces that you feel oppressing your life, if you've been praying and crying out but the heavens seem closed, I want you to know that it's no coincidence this video found you today. God is about to reveal a spiritual secret to you that very few people know. A weapon of spiritual warfare that hell itself trembles at when God's children wield it. And that could be the key you've been searching for to win that battle that's lasted far too long. Padre Pio, who had the gift of reading souls, who saw angels and demons, who bore the wounds of Christ on his own body, left something extraordinary recorded in his letters and teachings about Saint Joseph that most Catholics have never heard, and that can radically transform your prayer life and your ability to overcome the attacks of the evil one. Before we continue, if you feel this message arrived at the exact moment you needed to hear something like this, if your heart is racing because something within you recognizes these words aren't a coincidence, hit that like button right now, because when you do that, you're telling YouTube that more people facing the same spiritual struggles, carrying the same impossible burdens, desperately needing divine intervention, need to hear this revelation. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it now. Hit that notification bell, because here you'll find powerful prayers every day, profound teachings from the saints, spiritual revelations that will strengthen your faith and equip you for the battles you face. Don't forget to subscribe, because this community is a prayer army, thousands of souls interceding for each other, learning the secrets of the spiritual life together, growing in faith and winning battles that once seemed lost. And now, before I reveal what Padre Pio taught about Saint Joseph and what you should ask for before April 5th, I want you to do something very important, something that will activate the faith in your heart and declare to the spiritual world that you are ready to receive this blessing. Write in the comments right now, Saint Joseph, protect my family from darkness. Go to the comments and write that phrase, because when you declare it publicly, when you put your faith into action through this simple act, you are opening a portal of grace over your life. You are calling heaven's attention to your need. You are positioning yourself as someone who will no longer passively accept the enemy's attacks, but who will fight using the spiritual weapons God has placed at your disposal. Right now, Saint Joseph, protect my family from darkness. Let me tell you something that will make you understand why Padre Pio had such a profound devotion to Saint Joseph, and why he insisted that all his spiritual children, all those seeking his guidance, should turn to this saint with urgency and absolute confidence. Padre Pio lived in constant spiritual warfare. Demons attacked him physically at night, leaving marks on his body, trying to prevent him from praying, from celebrating Mass, from hearing confessions. He saw the battles that take place in the invisible world, those terrible struggles between angels and demons for the soul of each person. And amidst all of this, he discovered something that completely changed his way of praying and advising people. Saint Joseph is the terror of demons. Have you ever stopped to think why the enemy fears Saint Joseph so much? think with me. This man was chosen by God the Father to be the guardian, the protector, the provider of the Holy Family. He protected Jesus when Herod wanted to kill him. He protected Mary through all of life's difficulties. He worked tirelessly to provide everything the Holy Family needed. And if Saint Joseph protected the Son of God himself from the attacks of evil, if he defended Blessed Mary from all dangers, can you imagine the power he has to protect you, your family, your children, against the spiritual attacks you face? Padre Pio taught that when you place your family under Saint Joseph's protection, when you ask him to be the guardian of your home, just as he was the guardian of the home in Nazareth, something happens in the spiritual world that demons cannot stand. They lose access, they lose strength. They are expelled by the authority of this saint who carries within him the power of having been the adoptive Father of God himself. But there's something even deeper that Padre Pio revealed, something very few Catholics know, and that will make you understand why before April 5th is a spiritually strategic time to make specific requests to Saint Joseph. Do you know why March 19th, the solemnity of Saint Joseph, and the entire month of March dedicated to him, and especially the days leading up to this period, are so spiritually powerful? Because we are in a liturgical season where the Church invites us to contemplate the mystery of Saint Joseph's fatherhood, to meditate on how he cared for Jesus and Mary, and, most importantly, to imitate his obedient faith, his absolute trust in God even when everything seemed impossible. And Padre Pio, with that wisdom that comes from the Holy Spirit, with that profound knowledge of spiritual things that only saints possess, would say that when you approach Saint Joseph during this specific time of year, when you make your requests to him before his great feast arrives, it's like knocking on the door of a loving Father who is already preparing the blessings he will pour out on his children. He taught that Saint Joseph has a special authority with Jesus and Mary, an authority that comes from the fact that for years he was the head of that family, the one Jesus obeyed on earth, the one whose decisions guided the steps of the Holy Family. And if Jesus obeyed Saint Joseph when he was on earth, if God, incarnate himself, submitted to the authority of this just man, can you imagine the weight of Saint Joseph's intercession before the throne of God? Now, pay close attention, because here's what Padre Pio considered the most important secret about Saint Joseph, something he constantly repeated to people who came to him in desperation, facing impossible situations, battles that had dragged on for years without resolution. He would say, "Go to Saint Joseph and ask for the impossible. Ask for what you've already given up on, because you think it will never happen. Ask for what doctors have said is incurable. Ask for what, in your financial situation, seems absolutely unattainable. Ask for what in your relationships seems so broken it can never be restored." Because Saint Joseph is the saint of impossible cases, the patron of desperate causes, the one God chose precisely to handle the greatest impossibility in human history, to protect and provide for the Son of God while he was a vulnerable child in a world that wanted him dead. Padre Pio saw with his own spiritual eyes people who made novenas to Saint Joseph being completely transformed. He saw healings that medicine couldn't explain, reconciliations in families that had been broken for decades, financial provisions arriving in absolutely miraculous ways for people who had no hope left. And when these people returned to give thanks, to share the miracle they had received, Padre Pio would say something that should be etched in the heart of every Catholic. "I knew Saint Joseph wouldn't abandon you, because he never abandons those who trust in him with a child's faith." You watching this now, I need to ask you a very serious, very direct question. What is happening in your life that you've tried everything, prayed in every way, sought help from every corner, but you remain stuck in that situation? What is stealing your peace, robbing your sleep, making you wake up every morning with that weight on your chest, that anguish that seems endless? Is it an illness doctors can't cure? Is it a child who has strayed from God and family, and you no longer know how to bring them back? Is it a financial situation so desperate you see no way out? Is it a marriage crumbling and you fear losing your family? Is it a spiritual battle, a demonic oppression you feel but don't know how to overcome? Whatever it is, I want you to understand something that will change everything. You don't have to keep carrying this alone. Saint Joseph is waiting for you to come to him, not with memorized empty prayers, not with religious formalities that don't come from the heart, but like a desperate child running into their father's arms, knowing that there they will find protection, provision, solution. And if you want to know exactly what to ask Saint Joseph before April 5th, what Padre Pio recommended people ask for urgently, here it is. Ask for protection against the attacks of the evil one. Ask him to be the guardian of your family, just as he was the guardian of the Holy Family. Ask him to dispel every demonic force that is trying to destroy your home, your children, your marriage, your health, your finances. Ask for discernment to make the right decisions, because Saint Joseph was a man of deep wisdom. He knew how to hear God's voice in dreams. He knew when to flee to Egypt and when to return. He had that supernatural ability to discern God's will even in the most confusing and dangerous situations. Ask for material provision, because he was a carpenter, a worker, a provider, and he perfectly understands what it means to support a family with the work of one's own hands. He knows the anguish of not knowing if there will be enough to feed those you love. Ask for a holy death, because Saint Joseph had the privilege of dying in the arms of Jesus and Mary. He is the patron of a good death, and there is no more important request you can make than to ask to be prepared when your time comes, to depart this life in a state of grace with a clean heart before God. And there's something Padre Pio insisted on greatly, something that might seem strange to some, but makes perfect sense when you understand the deep spirituality of this saint. He said you should ask Saint Joseph every day, not just when you're desperate, not just when you have an urgent problem, but every day as part of your prayer routine. Because Saint Joseph isn't a saint for emergencies. He is a spiritual father who wants to be present in every moment of your life, in joys and sorrows, in victories and defeats, in calm days and stormy ones. Padre Pio had a habit of praying to Saint Joseph first thing in the morning, before starting any other activity, consecrating the entire day to this saint's protection. He said that when you do this, when you place your day in Saint Joseph's hands before even leaving the house, it's like putting an invisible shield around yourself, spiritual protection that demons cannot penetrate. And at night, before sleeping, he did the same, asking Saint Joseph to guard his sleep, to ward off nightmares and spiritual attacks that happen during the night, to protect his soul while his body rested. And do you know why? Because Padre Pio had personal experience. He knew that night is the demon's preferred time to attack, when we are most vulnerable, when our guard is down, when fear and anxiety seem strongest. But he discovered that when you sleep under Saint Joseph's protection, when you ask him to be the guardian of your sleep just as he guarded the sleep of the child Jesus, something happens. You sleep in peace. You truly rest. You wake up spiritually renewed. But now comes the most important part, the thing that will make the difference between just hearing about Saint Joseph and truly experiencing the power of his intercession in your life. Padre Pio didn't just teach us to pray to Saint Joseph. He taught us to make a consecration, a deep commitment, a total surrender to this saint. And this consecration, when made with true faith, when made with an open heart, when made with the willingness to live the values Saint Joseph lived, it completely transforms your spiritual life. What does it mean to consecrate your life to Saint Joseph? It means recognizing that just as he was chosen by God to be the protector of the Holy Family, you are now choosing him to be the protector of your family as well. It means promising that you will imitate his virtues: purity, obedience, honest work, a life of silent prayer, absolute trust in God even when everything seems to go wrong. It means committing to invoke his name every day, to honor him not just with words but with actions, to live in a way that is worthy of having Saint Joseph as a patron and protector. And Padre Pio guaranteed, with all the authority of someone who lived in constant communion with the saints, that when you make this consecration from the heart, when you truly surrender to Saint Joseph's protection, you will never again be alone in your battles, because this powerful saint will intercede for you in such an intense, constant, and effective way that you will begin to see transformations in your life that will leave you speechless. You who have made it this far in this video, who are being touched by these words, who feel your heart burning with the desire to experience this powerful protection of Saint Joseph, I want you to become part of this prayer community right now. Subscribe to this channel because here you will find more teachings like this, more revelations from the saints about spiritual life, more powerful prayers that will transform your reality. Don't just watch this video and leave. Stay with us. Become the part of this spiritual family where thousands of people are praying for each other, where you will receive strength for your battles, where your faith will grow every day. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos, because each message we share could be exactly what you need to hear at that moment. And now, in the comments, write this powerful declaration: I consecrate my family to Saint Joseph. When you write this, it's not just a comment. It's a prophetic declaration. It's you saying in the spiritual realm that from today on, your family is under the protective mantle of this powerful saint. It's you activating blessings that were just waiting for you to take this step of faith. Right now, I consecrate my family to Saint Joseph. Now, I need to tell you something that Padre Pio revealed in one of his letters, something very few people know, but which has extraordinary spiritual power. He wrote to one of his spiritual children who was going through a terrible trial, a situation that humanly had no solution, and said the following: Make a novena of 13 Tuesdays in honor of Saint Joseph, asking for what you need, but especially offering him your life, your work, your difficulties, and I guarantee you that before you finish this novena, you will receive the grace you are asking for, or something even better that God knows you need. 13 Tuesdays. Why this number? Why this day of the week? Because the Church traditionally honors Saint Joseph on Tuesdays, and the number 13 represents Jesus and the 12 apostles, the fullness of the Christian community, the totality of surrender. Padre Pio used to say that when you make this novena with faith, when you go to Saint Joseph every Tuesday for 13 consecutive weeks, something happens in the spiritual realm that breaks resistances, that tears down walls, that opens paths that were completely closed. He saw people begin this novena in absolutely desperate situations and finish completely transformed, not just because they received what they asked for, but because during this process of constant prayer, persevering faith, and renewed trust week after week, they themselves were being molded, purified, and strengthened spiritually in a way they never imagined possible. And there's something else you need to know about what the devil fears in Saint Joseph, something Padre Pio taught in his spiritual retreats when he was surrounded only by his closest friars, and could speak more deeply about the spiritual realities he witnessed. He would say that demons hate Saint Joseph more than you can imagine, because he represents everything they lost through pride. Think about it. Lucifer rebelled against God because he didn't want to serve, because he wanted to be equal to God, because his pride destroyed him. And then comes Saint Joseph, a simple man, a carpenter, who when God asks him to be the father of his own son, he doesn't question, he doesn't argue, he doesn't try to understand everything. He simply obeys. When the angel appears and tells him to flee to Egypt in the middle of the night, he doesn't discuss, he doesn't ask for explanations, he doesn't complain about the difficulty. He simply gets up, takes Mary and Jesus, and goes. This immediate obedience, this profound humility, this ability to serve without seeking glory for himself, this is the exact opposite of everything demons represent. And when you invoke Saint Joseph, when you ask for his protection, you are calling someone who has such great moral authority in the spiritual realm, a virtue so opposite to the nature of demons that they simply cannot bear his presence. It's as if Saint Joseph's very holiness were a light so intense that it burns away darkness, expels evil spirits, and purifies the spiritual environment around those who are under his protection. Father Pio himself recounted an episode that happened to him, something he rarely shared, but which some friars managed to document. On one particularly violent night of demonic attack, when he was being beaten by demons in his room, when the pain was so unbearable he could barely breathe, he cried out the name of Saint Joseph, and in that very instant, instantaneously, the demons fled as if struck by lightning. And then, when all was silent, Father Pio felt a gentle, strong, protective presence, and he knew it was Saint Joseph who had come to his aid. He described this experience by saying that when Saint Joseph arrives, the demons don't just stop attacking, they flee in terror, because they know they have no power against this saint, who carries the authority of having been the adoptive father of Jesus Christ. And from that day on, whenever Father Pio felt a spiritual attack beginning, he immediately invoked Saint Joseph, and the protection was instant, absolute, unquestionable. He would tell his spiritual children, if you are being attacked by the enemy, if you feel a spiritual oppression in your home, in your family, in your life, don't waste time trying to fight alone. Call on Saint Joseph, because he has the authority and the power to expel all the evil that is afflicting you. And now, because I know there is someone watching this video who is at this very moment tormented by thoughts of despair, by spiritual oppressions, by situations that seem to have no way out, I want to offer a prayer with you now. A powerful prayer to Saint Joseph that Father Pio prayed constantly. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be lying down, sitting, standing, in any position. Just close your eyes for a moment. Place your hand on your heart, and let's invoke together the protection of this mighty saint. Glorious Saint Joseph, most chaste spouse of Most Holy Mary, faithful guardian of the Holy Family, protector of Jesus and Mary, I come before you today recognizing that I urgently need your powerful intercession. You, who were chosen by God Himself to protect those who were most precious to His heart, I ask you now, protect my family just as you protected the Holy Family. Drive away from us all evil, all demonic oppression, all the forces of darkness that try to destroy our home, our peace, our faith. Saint Joseph, you who know the anguish of a father who must provide for his family, you who worked tirelessly to support Jesus and Mary, look upon me now in my need, in my financial struggles, in my worries about the sustenance of those I love, and intercede with Jesus so that I may receive the provision I need. Saint Joseph, you who were a man of deep wisdom and discernment, who knew how to hear the voice of God in the most difficult moments, who made sound decisions even when everything seemed impossible, I ask you, enlighten my mind, guide my steps, help me to discern God's will for my life, so that I may not lose my way in the deceptive paths the world offers. Saint Joseph, you who had the privilege of dying in the arms of Jesus and Mary, patron of a good death, I consecrate to you this moment and all the days that remain to me on this earth, and I ask you, prepare my soul for the encounter with God. Keep me in a state of grace. Deliver me from mortal sin, so that when my hour comes, I may depart this life in peace, knowing that I will find the Father's mercy. Amen. Now, open your eyes and receive this prophetic word that the Holy Spirit is placing in my heart for you at this moment. The battle you are facing will not last forever. God has already decreed the end of this trial, has already established the moment of your liberation, has already prepared the victory you will experience. But He is waiting for you to take a step of faith, to trust not just with words, but with actions, to cast yourself into the arms of divine providence through the intercession of Saint Joseph. And you will take this step before April 5th. You will make your consecration. You will begin your novena. You will invoke this mighty saint every day, and you will see with your own eyes how God honors the faith of those who trust in Saint Joseph. You will witness miracles in your life that will make you fall to your knees in gratitude. You will see doors opening that have been closed for years. You will experience supernatural protection in moments of danger you didn't even know you were running. You will receive provisions in ways your rational mind will not be able to explain, because when God provides through the intercession of Saint Joseph, He does so in a way that makes it clear it was Him, not coincidence, not luck, but the mighty hand of the Father caring for you through the same saint who cared for His Son on earth. But I need to warn you about something very important, something Father Pio always emphasized when teaching about devotion to Saint Joseph. It is not magic. It is not superstition. It is not an automatic formula where you pray, and presto, what you want happens. It is a relationship of faith. It is a spiritual commitment. It is a true surrender. Saint Joseph is not a genie in a bottle who grants wishes. He is a spiritual father who cares for those who sincerely entrust themselves to his protection. And, like any father, he sometimes answers our requests in ways different from what we expected, because he knows what we truly need better than we know ourselves. It may be that you ask for something specific and receive something different, but always better, always more suited to God's plan for your life. Father Pio used to say that the greatest grace you can receive through the intercession of Saint Joseph is not necessarily the healing of an illness, not necessarily the solution to a financial problem, not necessarily the reconciliation of a relationship, but rather the transformation of your heart, the sanctification of your soul, the ability to trust in God even when circumstances do not change in the way you expected. Because in the end, what truly matters? Having everything resolved in this life but losing your soul for eternity, or going through trials here but growing in holiness and ensuring your eternal salvation. And there's something you need to understand about why before April 5th is so important, and it's not just about the liturgical calendar or church tradition. It's that we are in a moment in history where the forces of darkness are intensifying their attacks on families like never before. Do you see that? How marriages that seemed solid are falling apart? How children are drifting away from the faith in alarming numbers? How moral and spiritual confusion is invading even Christian homes that were once strongholds of faith? How there's an epidemic of depression, anxiety, addiction, suicide, especially among young people. This isn't accidental. It's not just a social or psychological phenomenon. There's a spiritual war happening, and the enemy's primary target is the family, because he knows that if he can destroy families, if he can break the unity between parents and children, between husband and wife, between siblings, he will have won the battle for the soul of this generation. And that's precisely why God, in His infinite providence, is calling you now, is placing this video in front of you at this specific moment, is touching your heart with the urgency to consecrate your family to Saint Joseph, because He wants to give you a powerful spiritual weapon to protect those you love from the attacks that are coming and that will continue to come. Padre Pio saw this prophetically. He knew we would reach times like these where confusion would be so great, where evil would disguise itself so well as good, where even the elect would be at risk of being deceived. And that's why he insisted so much on devotion to Saint Joseph, because he knew this saint has a special grace for these difficult times, specific protection for families under attack, a particular strength for those who are struggling to maintain their faith in a world that mocks everything sacred. He used to say that Saint Joseph is like a spiritual general that God has raised up specifically to lead the battle for the protection of families in the last days, and that those who place themselves under the command of this general, those who enlist in this spiritual army through consecration to Saint Joseph, these will not be defeated, because they fight with a strength that doesn't come from themselves, but from heaven itself. And look at the beautiful promise Padre Pio made, based on his personal experience of decades living under Saint Joseph's protection. He said that no family truly consecrated to Saint Joseph will be destroyed. No home that honors this saint with their heart will be completely dominated by darkness, because even if storms come, even if attacks come, even if terrible trials come, Saint Joseph will be there, holding the family together, protecting its members, interceding ceaselessly until victory is achieved. So now I want to give you practical, specific instructions on how to make this consecration before April 5th in a way that is true, profound, and transforming. First, choose a day in the coming days. It can be today if you feel the Holy Spirit is prompting you to do so, and set aside time for prayer. It doesn't need to be hours, but it needs to be quality time. Time where you are truly present, not distracted, not rushed, but there with an open heart before God. Second, if possible, go to a church. Kneel before an image or statue of Saint Joseph. And if it's not possible to go physically to a church, do it in your room, in your prayer corner, in the place where you usually seek God. Third, make a prayer of consecration in your own words. It doesn't need to be eloquent, It doesn't need to be theologically perfect. It just needs to be sincere, coming from the heart. Telling Saint Joseph that you recognize his role as protector of the Holy Family, and that you are now asking him to be the protector of your family too. That you consecrate to him your spouse, your children, your parents, your siblings, all those you love, placing them all under his mantle of protection. Fourth, make a concrete commitment to honor Saint Joseph, not just with words but with actions, promising that you will pray to him every day, even if it's a brief prayer, that you will imitate his virtues, especially purity, obedience to God, honest work, and a life of prayer, that you will speak about him to others, spreading this devotion that can save so many families. And fifth, begin living this consecration immediately. Don't put it off. Don't wait to feel ready, because you'll never feel completely ready. Start today invoking Saint Joseph in your needs, asking for his protection in temptations, thanking him for the graces you have already received, and for those you will yet receive. And now, before we finish, I need to tell you about something that will happen when you make this consecration, something that Padre Pio warned people not to be alarmed by. He used to say that often, right after you consecrate your family to Saint Joseph, things might even seem to get worse temporarily. Problems that were hidden might come to the surface. Situations that were dormant might stir. There might be a period of turbulence before peace. Why? Because when you place your family under Saint Joseph's protection, when you bring the light of this saint's presence into your home, the darkness that was hidden in the corners cannot bear this light and begins to manifest, to struggle, to try to resist before being definitively expelled. It's like when you turn on the light in a dark room and see cockroaches scurrying. They were there all along, you just didn't see them. But now that there's light, they are exposed and try to flee. Padre Pio would say, "Don't be discouraged if this happens. Don't think the consecration didn't work or that you did something wrong. Understand that this is part of the purification process. It's evil being exposed and expelled. And if you remain firm in faith, if you continue to trust in Saint Joseph, if you don't give up in the middle of the battle, you will see that after this initial storm comes a peace, a protection, a transformation that you never imagined possible. For you who have made it to the end of this video, that in itself is a sign that God is working in your heart. He doesn't let someone watch a message like this all the way through unless he has specific purposes for that person. He brought you here because he has something big prepared for your life, for your family, and he wants you to receive it through the powerful intercession of Saint Joseph. So, don't let this message be just another video you watched and forgot. Make it a turning point in your spiritual life, the moment you decided to take the protection of your family seriously. The day you understood you don't have to fight alone because there's a powerful spiritual Father waiting for you to throw yourself into his arms. And please, urgently share this video. Send it to that person you know who is going through terrible battles, who is under spiritual attack, who desperately needs to know there is hope, that protection is available, that Saint Joseph is just waiting for them to cry out for help so he can come to their aid. You could be the instrument God uses to save an entire family from destruction, to free someone from demonic oppression, to bring peace back to a home that was being torn apart. And before we sign off, write in the comments one last time, as a prophetic act of faith, Saint Joseph, I trust in you. Make this public declaration, because when you declare your trust in Saint Joseph before witnesses, You are creating a spiritual commitment that heaven itself will honor. You are telling the angels and the demons that from this day forward, you no longer walk alone. You have the protection of the saint who protected Jesus Christ. You have the intercession of the one who never fails those who trust in him. Right now, Saint Joseph, I trust in you. May the Lord bless you powerfully. May he fulfill all his purposes in your life. May he protect your family from all evil through the glorious intercession of Saint Joseph. May you experience miracles that leave you speechless, transformations that bring you to your knees in gratitude, protections that make you understand God has never abandoned you, not for a second. And when all of this happens, come back here and share your testimony in the comments, telling others what God has done through the intercession of Saint Joseph, strengthening the faith of thousands who are still doubting, who are still hesitating, who need to hear a real testimony from someone who dared to trust and saw God's hand move powerfully. Go in peace, protected by the mantle of Saint Joseph, guarded by divine providence, strengthened by the certainty that you will never fight alone again. Amen.